Lloyd Vance joins me for a couple minutes. Does a great job covering the NFL, contributor to NFL Network. How you doing?
I'm doing great there. Sounds like you're having fun watching some TV.
I don't know, Lloyd. I just don't know some days. I'm busy last 12 hours. We'll save the Eagles for last. Let's get to the move with Seattle and Houston. They had a need for a tackle. You had a disgruntled player in Brown with the Texans, and Seattle pulls the trigger. It's a good move because they needed to protect Russell Wilson. I give him credit, too, restructuring his contract a little bit, too.
Definitely, and Seattle's been searching ever since George Fant got hurt with that ACL in the preseason, and they just have not done a good job protecting Russell Wilson. Russell's done a great job covering a lot of things up for them, moving around, moving away from pressure, but you could clearly see against the Texans that Clowney was all over the field on them, and they wanted to make that move. They have Dwayne Brown, comes off the couch and plays at a very good level against Seattle. They did a good job protecting Deshaun Watson. What a great game that was, and it's a great pickup for them. They didn't give up a lot for him, and he's still young enough at 31, 32 years old that they can get some years left from him.
You know what's crazy about that game? Deshaun Watson is making plays all over the place, and then 3rd and 4, you take the ball right out of your quarterback's hands. I don't get that by O'Brien. I just don't.
Yeah, there were a couple of things. I was like, well, why did he call that play there? They should stay aggressive with Deshaun Watson. He's a young guy. Let's face it, he's still learning on the fly, and he's going out there and flying around and making plays with his feet, with his legs. And I know eventually he'll mature and grow and learn the playbook. But right now, he's just a playmaker out there making plays.
I was a little surprised that the 49ers didn't bench CJ the other day against the Eagles. That's a tough spot. Second career start, West Coast, East Coast against that defense, and go to Hoyer. Instead, they make the move last night for Garoppolo. They'll eventually cut Hoyer. Is this a long-term solution here? Do you believe that the 49ers are looking at Jimmy Garoppolo as a long-term solution at the starting quarterback position?
Yeah, I was just talking with some guys out there, and they do believe that Jimmy Garoppolo is a guy that they can grow with as a team. We know we had a limited view of him with the New England Patriots, but he played well in those couple games that Tom Brady was injured. A guy coming from Eastern Illinois, a second-round draft pick, and he does have some pedigree about him. So we'll see if he's a backup that can grow into a starter, a la Kurt Warner back in the day, or if he's just going to be another one of these backups that gets a chance to start like Matt Castle did in the past and just couldn't carry the flag. So a good opportunity for them. Now we're going to see where they go in the draft. They're still going to probably pick very high, and if Darnold, if Rosen's there, you have to wonder if they're going to grab one of those guys or keep Jimmy Garoppolo going 4 or 5 years from now.
And then we saw the move with the Philadelphia Eagles trading with Miami, Jay Ajayi for a 4th-round draft pick. I think it's a great move by Howie Roseman because ultimately you've added more depth with your running backs. You're giving them that 1-2 punch, wear down defenses coming November, December. But it also tells me that the Philadelphia Eagles look at the rest of the league, the NFC particularly, and they say it's wide open. We're all in. Let's go for it. And I also see another trend here. He realizes he's got young players that he can basically put around Carson Wentz, right? Whether it's Hollins, whether it's Blunt, whether it's Ajayi. You've got 3 older guys, including Sproles, with Smith, Jeffrey, and Blunt, probably not going to be back next year. So it's his way of saying, let's start building this team up.
Yeah, and you're right, Q. This team is really on a roll right now, and the road is kind of laid out for them to go towards the playoffs. We know their opponents, their winning percentage is kind of low, so they're taking advantage of this. They're bringing in Ajayi, a guy who is only 24 years old, as you're saying, under contract through next season. They can kind of figure out if he's a malcontent coming from the Dolphins or he's a talent that we saw in so many games where he rushed for 200 yards. So tough physical runner, and he can pick up the blitz. I still would like to see the Eagles try to figure out what they're going to do with their offensive line. Wentz got hit a lot against the Niners, but it's a solid win for them, and now they go against a Denver team that's kind of beat up, and they don't know what they're going to do with the quarterback position. So Eagles looking good going into the bye.
Yeah, and you mentioned the offensive line. Well, first of all, they had to put Hicks on the IR. So maybe they're looking for a little depth at the linebacker spot. But you're right. You start to look at their offensive line as well. They're going to need some help. And I know there are a couple names out there. The kid over in Buffalo as well. They've got a ton of depth at the linebacker, I should say the offensive line spot. Do you think, if anything, they will pull the trigger, the Eagles, before 4 o'clock? Can you see one more move? And by the way, not to cut real quick, I was also under the impression, the Giants are so desperate for younger players on that line, anything right now. I'm a little surprised they haven't even called Buffalo to try to get offensive line help.
Yeah, and Buffalo has a couple guys, one mainly Central Henderson. He's a guy that's there kind of sitting there, a former pretty good tackle. He's pretty young. And maybe the Eagles will take the opportunity to look at him. Let's face it, the Eagles, they're running low on draft picks. I know they're leaking into 2018 picks, and you don't want to give too much up from the future, but if they could grab a guy for a 5th rounder, or 6th rounder, that's a good opportunity for them to bring somebody into their system.
What about Cordy Glenn, left tackle?
Yeah, Cordy Glenn, same guy. They have Deion Dawkins that came over from Temple, high-round draft pick. He's a good young guy, and they seem to really like him to grow. So, and also, you see Sean McDermott is getting rid of guys that do not fit the mold there with the Buffalo Bills and what they're building towards in the future. That team's really turned the corner, have not lost at home, and one of those guys may be on the move, but we know a couple teams are looking for offensive linemen as well as the Eagles.
A couple of minutes with Lloyd Vance on a Tuesday. We'll take you up to 2 o'clock. Rich Quinones here. Let's go to the games on the field. Last night, you saw another reason why the Denver Broncos, they're such a frustrating team if you're a Broncos fan. It starts and ends with the quarterback, and I think Vance Joseph going into the season, they really never had a clear-cut definition of who the quarterback was. I think eternally who was going to be going forward. You got a rookie head coach. It's a bad matchup. You got Simeon with the turnovers, special teams blunder last night, poor play. The defense has to keep them in games. I mean, what's the question? What's the answer here going for the Broncos when you look at the quarterback position?
Yeah, well, you have a Broncos team coming here to Philadelphia that, let's face it, they're built around that defense, and that defense with those corners, there's 2 of the best in the league, and then Von Miller. They can do some damage. So they need to find a quarterback that's a caretaker. And that's what Trevor Simeon was last year. I know he's a 7th-round pick coming out of Northwestern. Just has not been the guy. He was able to protect the football this year. And this year they're trying to open up a little bit more, and that's just not the name of the game for him. If they're smart, they'll lean on C.J. Anderson. And they do have Paxton Lynch here, who they moved up to get in the 1st round. I know his shoulder's getting healthy, so maybe they'll move him out there and John Elway will give him a shot. I really don't know why they would go to Brock Osweiler, a guy who came back to them and just has been a total flame out with the Houston Texans as well as the Cleveland Browns.
You're looking at a couple other names that potentially might be gone or traded before 4, Landry, Hilton. Do you think the next couple hours will be active? And if so, are you hearing anything regarding some of those players that are potentially on the trading block?
Yeah, Q, it's interesting because in years past, I know you and I talked at deadline, and we're like, this is not like baseball. There's not deals being done. But you have the older guard of general managers, the Bill Polian type of guys going out and retiring, and you're getting these younger guys that know people around the league and willing to make deals. So I do think that you may see something happen with the Colts. You have Chris Ballard there, a new general manager, and he'll probably want to move some of those guys because, let's face it, that team's not going anywhere. I think they move on from Chuck Pagano at the end of the season. Luck's probably not going to play, so maybe they'll start clearing some space and getting some draft picks to build around with the new group. Yeah,
when I came on at 12 this morning, I was talking to a couple people in Gore's camp, and they said that the talks with the Eagles, there were, I guess they labeled it as kind of soft talks. They weren't as serious as they believed, but there was a flirtation there. Gore's another name to watch going forward. You look around the NFL, all these quarterbacks going down. We know it's a quarterback-driven league. It's a marquee position. I made the point, listen, the Philadelphia Eagles right now, they have their franchise quarterback. And you look at Washington, people believe they have a franchise quarterback, but yet, if you allow Cousins to walk, there's probably 10 to 12 teams out there that would love to have a Kirk Cousins. And I'm just curious to get your thoughts on, just the whole, like what Cleveland's doing. They still can't figure it out, right? They draft quarterback year in and year in. But, man, if you get a franchise quarterback for the next 10, 12 years, the smart thing to do is start to build around him, and that's exactly what the Eagles are doing with Wentz.
Yeah, and Q, a quarterback's going to be either a coach killer or a guy that's going to carry the coach to the next level. We saw that in the past with Andy Reid. Made the right decision taking Donovan Nab, and they grew together. So I totally agree with you. You got to earmark your quarterback and grow with him. That's why everybody's trying to get in position to get Darnold, to get Rosen or Jackson coming out in this next draft. These young guys are exciting, and if you don't have one, you just pretty much don't have a chance. We just talked about the Denver Broncos. We see that the Niners finally are going to try to find to get a guy. And then another team, the Minnesota Vikings, yes, they're winning, but I just don't know how often you're going to be able to win with Case Keenum when the games really start to matter.
Now, this is where I'll disagree with you a little bit. I think right now, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I think he runs a smoother offense than Bradford. But to your point, you've got three capable quarterbacks. You've got Bradford. You know I'm not a fan of his, though, but he's a serviceable quarterback. You've got Keenum, and then you've got Teddy Bridgewater. So, you always say you can never have enough pass rushers. I mean, this is a team that has potentially three starting quarterbacks on their roster.
Yeah, and the good thing about those quarterbacks that you all talk about, they take care of the football, and that's what most of these teams out there, if they don't have that frontline quarterback, they just want a guy who's going to keep the game close, a guy that's going to give their defense an opportunity to get turnovers and special teams as well to get touchdowns off of big plays. So you look at the Buffalo Bills, what they're building there. Tyrod has done a nice job. He's not doing too much, and the receivers that they have are kind of nondescript. So they're trying to protect the ball, and then they're getting key plays on defense.
Yeah. All right, we got about 2 hours and 24 minutes to go before the trade deadline has come and gone. Lloyd, great stuff as always, pal. We'll talk next week. Appreciate the insight.
All right, thanks for having me on.